Hello, my name is Dr. Angela Tobin, and I run an online support group for kinship caregivers in Ohio called Kinship Caregivers Connect. Our support group had the pleasure of piloting Dr. Crumbley's training, The Inherent Strengths of Kinship Families. We went through all of the modules week by week and really got some great feedback from caregivers, and I wanted to share a little bit about that experience. So the main feedback from caregivers was that this training covers topics that are never talked about, but that are so important to learn about. We think about healing, identity, family dynamics, co-parenting. These are all things that bring up different topics for kinship caregivers, and sometimes they just don't know how to approach it. So caregivers really loved how Dr. Crumbley provided concrete strategies for approaching these different topics. And in the caregiver worksheets and in the presentation, there's scripts that caregivers can use and adapt. And a lot of kinship caregivers said that they actually went back to their families and used some of these. For example, we had caregivers who talked to their children about for the first time about why they're living in their house and not with their birth parents. And we also had other caregivers show pictures of the birth parent and really recognize the importance of that child knowing their birth parent. And they said, although these topics were sometimes hard to think about and talk about, it was so helpful to have a guide like Dr. Crumbley, who's so experienced and so knowledgeable in the field of kinship. And part of these trainings is that we actually included caregiver worksheets and also a facilitator's guide. And a lot of caregivers said the worksheets were really helpful because they're able to go home and think about the module for the week and really have something to look at and reference back to. And then they can also see their progress and look back at all of the topics they've learned about throughout the series. And as a facilitator, having that facilitator's guide was so helpful because everything was laid out right there and it is flexible. So sometimes I was able to read off the scripts. Sometimes I reviewed the scripts ahead of time and made it my own, but really having a set structure of how to run the group, starting with the warm-up activities, then transitioning into the topic in the video. And then within the facilitator's guide, we even have specific points to stop the video to ask questions. And it was so great to work the discussion throughout the video. So it wasn't just 30 minutes of watching, but really active participation throughout. And then of course, we'd have the discussion afterwards with the caregiver worksheets. So overall, this series really can be life-changing for caregivers and even for organizations looking to take caregivers on the journey of just learning more. And out of everything, I think caregivers and me also loved how strength-based the training was, because sometimes as a kinship caregiver, it can be negative trying to navigate so many things and having so many stressors and kind of feeling like the world is against you in some ways. But this training, caregiver said it felt like it gave them their power back and they realized the strengths and power they do have as a kinship caregiver. And this was just very life-changing and empowering to them, and also them realizing the importance of taking care of themselves throughout the process. So overall, I would highly, highly recommend the Inherent Strengths of Kinship Families to organizations that work with kinship families and to any kinship family who's watching too. And really, it's just a journey of learning more about kinship care. And like I said, those topics that aren't often talked about that are such strengths. But really, the magic is brought in the discussions and it's brought to life when caregivers are able to reflect on their own experiences and take some of the strategies with them. And having Dr. Crumbley on the screen with his calming voice to really guide us through it all, it was just a great journey to have together. And we got such great feedback to collecting different data measures, and really caregivers said that they really enjoyed the modules and would recommend it to someone else. And they also learned many different things throughout all of the trainings. So overall, I would highly recommend the Inherent Strengths of Kinship Families. Thank you so much.